calling all sort of out, newly out, or fully out lesbians. We are going to Provincetown.
Wing Women Weekend, October 16th to 20th, 2024, is your opportunity to join our crew and enjoy Provincetown's annual Women's Week.
One of the biggest challenges we hear from the lesbians we work with, especially those of us new to this community, is how intimidating it can be to connect with other LGBTQIA plus women and to find that all-important queer community.
I know, and you all want to be connected to the community so much and to meet new queer friends. And, hey, you never know, maybe even meet somebody special. But we can also know that it can be super intimidating to do these things alone.
So let us be your co-pilots as we enjoy some amazing activities in Provincetown, one of the gayest small towns in America, during their annual event for queer women of all ages.
Enjoy meeting new friends with us as your wing women.
It's the queer event of the year you won't want to miss.
Details at www.wingwomenweekend.com. That's wingwomenweekend.com. Embracing your LGBTQIA plus identity, especially after you've lived as a straight person for a long time, it's not as easy as just flicking a switch from straight to gay.
If only it were that easy. But the reality is that it takes a lot of work to untangle us from our old lives and transition into our new lives. That is why we call it the messy middle.
And if you are currently in the messy middle, that could mean coming out or figuring out your sexual identity and even divorce. Well, if that describes you, we have a workshop that is just for you.
From July 8th through 10th at 7 p.m. Central Time, we will be running a free workshop, Life Reimagined, Transforming Through the Messy Middle on Zoom. It's for any women, cis or trans or non-binary people comfortable in women's spaces who are grappling with the realities of coming out and perhaps navigating divorce.
It's free to sign up. Just head over to comingoutssupport.net to register, and you must register to attend.
Again, that's July 8th through 10th at 7 p.m. Central Time. It is free to attend. Sign up at comingoutssupport.net.
Hey queer friends, are you ready to be inspired? Welcome to Season 5 of Coming Out and Beyond, a podcast that shares stories from the LGBTQIA plus community. Here's your host, Anne-Marie Zanzal.
Hi, this is Anne-Marie Zanzal, and welcome back to another episode of Coming Out and Beyond, LGBTQIA plus stories. I am very excited to welcome back Barb Rowlandson to this show. She is a mom, author, humanist officiant, content marketing professional, plant enthusiast, and also a late in life lesbian. Barb works with Anne-Marie on course and social media content and produces the Coming Out and Beyond podcast. Barb came out in 2017 at age 45 as a result of having a catalyst relationship. Barb brings her knowledge and experience to her coaching role at Lotus Group Coaching, helping other women who are coming out recover from the end of their first lesbian relationships and prepare for the world of dating. She is an officiant with and on the board of directors for the Ontario Humanist Society and a Master of Counseling Psychology candidate at Yorkville University. Hi, Barb. Welcome back.
Well, thank you ever so much. I'm glad to be here. It's nice to be on this side of the camera once in a while.
It is, absolutely. So what are we going to talk about today, Barb?
Well, since continuing on our theme from the last episode that we recorded together, our theme of the messy middle, we're going to focus in a little bit more this time on Tammy Wynette, divorce, divorce, and when do we know it's time to pack it in? And although I think the conversation that we're about to have today is more geared towards women who are redefining their sexuality, I think a lot of the advice that we're going to share today could apply to any woman
Absolutely.
who is thinking about leaving their marriage.
Okay. So one of the factoids that I always give is that 80% of all divorces are initiated by women and
Mhm.
90% if they are college educated. And so most men don't like to initiate divorce, and there's a lot of complicated reasons about that, but we're not going to get into that today. we'll,
Okay.
do, we'll do another episode
That's
about
that's
that.
part three.
Yeah, that's part three. But we really want to talk first and foremost about when you need to think, or when we should think it's time to end a marriage. And so
Mhm.
we have about 10 or 11 things that we want to discuss. And we're going to go through them. And the first one that is really a big part of the later in life community is if you know you're monogamous, gay, and you want to pursue an intimate sexual relationship with someone. So you know that you're not straight, you may be bisexual, you may be lesbian, you may define as gay, and you want to pursue an intimate sexual relationship with someone. It's not impossible to do with this and stay married. It really isn't. We've seen women do it,
Mhm.
but it's made much more complicated by being married. Go.
Mhm.
What are
Yes.
your thoughts about that?
Well, listen, if you're looking to explore an intimate and sexual relationship with someone who is the same gender as you, and you're in a heteronormative marriage and you're monogamous, you know that opening your marriage or polyamory is not going to work for you. Um, I mean, we have seen it work with, especially I think with women who are in very, very long-term marriages, like 30, 40 plus
50 years?
years,
Yeah.
50, like those really, really long-term ones where their lives are just so entrenched that and frankly, one partner or the other might just like be like, you know what, go do your thing. It's okay. But here's the problem. When we invite a third person into the sphere, you invite somebody in and we have to really consider their feelings, right?
Right.
It's a
Well,
consideration.
well, I want to get a little bit, I want to get back a little bit to, okay, so you're not going to, like, you're not opening your marriage, you're not practicing out polyamory, but you would like to have a girlfriend. Okay. So a lot of times, as Barb said, it can work, and but the problem is, it's often very hard to be with somebody who will put up with those requirements that you have.
Mhm.
Now, a lot of times, you can find somebody that may be deeply closeted that will put up with those kinds of things. But in the end, there's often a lot of loss associated with that because you yourself can never fully be out, because you're
Mhm.
always sort of half in and half out. And as Barb and I talked about last week in our Messy Middle podcast, is it's like having your feet on two different platforms and your feet are slowly spreading apart. Because what inevitably happens if you're somebody who is queer or who is gay or lesbian or bi, you will develop feelings for this person, and they will be much more intense than we've ever experienced before.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden you're still married, and
Mhm.
what do you do about it, right?
Right.
Yeah,
And sorry, I'm just gonna say, like, at some point, as you develop a relationship, let's say you do ideally meet somebody who is okay with you remaining married, and you start a relationship with them, and you're both monogamous, and at some point the relationship can only develop so far because you can only give them so much of yourself.
correct. And I have had clients that have found the unicorn, right? Have had found the woman that was like, I'm okay with you being married. We're in an open relationship. You can do you, I can do me. I'm okay with you married. And inevitably, people develop feelings. And all of a sudden, you being going with your husband somewhere becomes a huge problem in your relationship because your girlfriend is jealous, or vice versa. Your husband's like, I'm okay if you date a woman. And in that, there's a lot of misogyny, because ask yourself, if I wanted to date a man, would my husband say that to me? Most likely not.
We hear a lot of our people say their husbands have a one penis policy, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. But they're okay with, and all of a sudden your husband, who thought he was going to be completely okay with you dating somebody, dating a woman, not a man, dating a woman, all of a sudden is horribly jealous, is very angry, is making it very, very hard for you to continue on this relationship. So if you are thinking about coming out, and if you are thinking about being in a relationship with a woman, it may be time to end your marriage. It just,
Mhm.
and for me, I, like, my ex-husband and I talked about all the next point we're going to talk about opening your marriage, polyamory, threesome. For my ex-husband and I, that was literally a half an hour conversation, because both of us knew we were too monogamous, which just wouldn't work with us. We had been monogamous the entire time, and we just knew that that wasn't going to work with us. And I also wasn't interested in just the sexual aspect of being with a woman, so threesome was not going to work with me. I wanted to have an emotional, physical, intellectual, and spiritual connection with a woman. So opening up my marriage was out for me, but it's not for a lot of our clients, right, Barb? And what do we see?
Well, often what we see is that opening a marriage or polyamory, and these are not the same things, by the way, don't conflate them. Um, these are often tactics that are used as kind of a bargaining
Hmm.
at the bargaining stage. Like, maybe I don't really have to fully leave my marriage. Maybe I don't have to leave this comfortable place where it's things I know and understand to go and pursue this new thing. And so the idea of, hey, let's open up our marriage, or let's each date somebody else, um, is often pitched as an idea. But I like your response, when you were talking to your ex-husband about that, and considering, and your response to him was, of course, hey, if I'm going to sleep with another woman,
Right. It's
you're
not,
not going to
I don't
be
want
there.
you there. I don't want you there. And that, like, now looking back at it, like, to me, it was a real clue that I was definitely not straight. But I didn't know that at the time, but I had no desire to have a threesome with my ex-husband. And I just didn't. Um, but what we find is that a lot of times people come to us after they've opened up their marriage. So let's define
Mhm.
opening your marriage. Opening your marriage is when you and your husband each have a relationship outside the marriage. So you may have a girlfriend, your husband may have a girlfriend, you each have your own relationships. While in polyamory, a lot of times people will have a girlfriend, but the husband may also date the girlfriend. Um, but a lot of times in the polyamory situation, that's where we talk about the one penis policy. The guys are very okay for you to go out and date a girlfriend, and them to date your girlfriend. But if you said, hey, let's bring a guy into this relationship too, a lot of times men are really will not want to do that. And that's why we call it the one penis policy. I've talked to polyamory experts over the years, and they say that a lot of times they can see people coming into the polyamory world to save their marriages. And Mistress Cass, who I interviewed in season 4 last year, talked about it, and she said you can tell when somebody's trying to save their marriage. And
Oh, for
I
sure.
also have to ask ourselves, why are we so desperately trying to save a marriage, right? It's
Mm,
about the conditioning we received often, that we try to save our marriages no matter what. And so polyamory and open marriage, for people who have been monogamous prior, often, as Barb says, is a bargaining strategy. It's a part of the grieving process of
mm,
everything changing. And the grieving process is, the 5 stages of grief, and that is shock, depression, anger. What's the other one? Oh, bargaining and acceptance. And and so if you think about what's happening to you and your marriage, you're grieving. And so, well, if we do this, maybe if we open up our marriage, we can still stay together. So if you have started to practice polyamory and opening your marriage and it's not working, maybe it's time you may need to think about divorce. And Barb mentioned it before too. Talk about bringing a whole nother person into the marriage.
Well, I mean,
That's
and this is
People don't consider it.
no, they don't. And like you say, with polyamory, which by the way, we really kind of generally accept as an orientation now, just
Yeah.
the way being monogamous or being gay or straight is an orientation. You either have the capacity to be polyamorous or you don't. And polyamory, which usually involves, having a primary partner and then other partners and consensually, if you are like, if you are just aligned for monogamy and you try polyamory, it's just not, it's going to be like putting your right shoe on your left foot.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we have to consider too, just like I said earlier, that uh, you're inviting a whole person into this scenario, a whole other separate person other than the two primaries, right? And what about their feelings, their needs, their wants, their desires? Like, oftentimes they kind of get shuttled off or minimized. And in fact, to have a meaningful relationship with someone, it involves having meaningful, deep, intimate, caring connection, which if you're not available to give it, then you might have to really think about making the decision of whether you're going to stay or whether you're going to go on and pursue something new.
Hmm. A lot of times people talk about uh, like when they came out, um, that they feel like they woke up. They talk about a rebirth almost. And
Mhm.
so we're going to talk a little bit about detachment or distraction. Can you say more about that, Barb?
For sure. And I don't think this is unique to the queer experience. I think
I
this
think
is
it's the female experience.
the female experience, especially in long-term marriage, where connection becomes lost. And one of the ways that, we can tell um, if something isn't right with us and the circumstances that we're in is if we disassociate or detach. And it's kind of like the brain's way of protecting itself from having to deal with hard reality, hard truth, and making a difficult decision. So if you find yourself having a very difficult time identifying who you are
Hmm.
without reference to other people. So not I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a cousin, just like who are you? And if you have a difficult time answering that very fundamental question, you may be living in a state of disassociation or detachment. Another thing that, and I've seen it a lot in all kinds of marriages where women who are, we're a pretty smart and capable and educated bunch, uh, find things to fill their time.
Hmm.
I've gone and spent, this week I went and spent $200 at the craft store to do this
I knew
thing.
so many people that were crafters. that,
Yes.
that because their marriages were a little empty, so they would find other things to do. I think I
Mhm.
probably went back to divinity school because my marriage I felt very empty. And I remember when I went back to divinity, like when got my master's, it was because I remember saying I have to do something for myself. And
Totally.
because nothing was for me, everything was for every other people. And that's why it's ironic that I went into a profession where we caretake people.
For sure.
Yeah, but But the thing is that I wanted something that was, I wanted my own identity apart from
Mm,
my children and
yes.
husband. And if you are, whether you're gay or straight, it doesn't matter. If you are longing for identity beyond your husband and children, and your husband may not be supportive of that. If your husband is, that's a whole different story. But if your husband is like saying, no, you can't do that or anything like that, then it may be time to think about leaving your marriage.
Mhm,
Because we're, you know, the rules are changing. You do not have to stay married for your entire life to somebody just because it's something your mom and dad did or
mhm,
it's something people in your community do. Because
mhm,
if you are happy, I mean, unhappy in your marriage, or you're so disconnected from yourself and your feelings that you can't even identify them with a score,
mhm,
then it may be time to think about one, getting into therapy, and also two, or coaching, or two, leaving your marriage because maybe this
mhm,
marriage is not, um, you know, fertilizing you.
mhm,
Thinking of Barb as our plant lover, you're not getting enough water, you're not getting enough sun, you're not getting enough TLC in this marriage.
mhm,
You feel incredibly lonely, even though you're incredibly busy. Then it
mhm,
may be maybe a reason to start thinking about leaving your marriage.
mhm. I'm sure we all know this woman in our we all have this woman in our lives, the one who's left her marriage, whether she's queer or not, and you see her, like, right before she leaves, and she's, like, wilted.
Yeah,
And then
wilted.
you see her a year or 2 later, and she's fabulous. It's just like,
we
"What happened?" It's
we
'cause
see
she's
that. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, Barb.
yeah, you're right well, I think you're about to say we see that in
All the
all
time,
the
all
time.
over.
Absolutely. I remember I was about, a year or 2 before I ended up leaving, and I'd wanted to leave for a long time, and I remember a friend of mine clocked me on something, and she said, "It's like you're hiding your light under a bushel," and
Hmm.
that never left me. And another thing that I think about when we're talking about this is how in your work, with hospice
Hmm.
and underscoring that people tend not to regret the things that they have done. They tend to regret the things that they have not. So if you were a bystander in your own life, that's gonna feel pretty crummy, I think, by the time you
Well,
end up at
I remember as a hospice chaplain having people saying to me, "I wish I had left my marriage. I
Mhm,
I stayed married because I was supposed to." Now, I'm going to say, if you leave your marriage and you make a mistake, you will make meaning out of it, and your
mhm,
life will go on, and you will
mhm,
find other things and other humans to be in your life. But I would say, I've never had anybody really, I've never actually, now that I think of it, I never have heard from one person that has gotten divorced that they regret getting divorced.
mhm,
Um, especially in my hospice work. So I was working with all kinds of people. I never had anybody say to me, "Oh gosh, I wish I didn't get divorced." Most people are so glad they got divorced when they finally did. So
right?
now we're going to talk about the harmful things. So if you are engaging in harmful behaviors, drinking too much, taking too many drugs, overeating, overspending, overworking, overexercising, so that you can numb the pain of being in your relationship, that's a really good sign that this is not the relationship for you. Whether you're
Mhm,
gay or straight, it doesn't matter. These are really applicable, except for the early ones. These are really applicable for anybody.
mhm. I could add to that list, Anne-Marie, having affairs as well.
Yeah. If you're continuously having affairs, why are you staying married? It's
Mhm,
clear that you are not happy. And conversely, also, if you're married to someone who is abusive, who is physically harming you, is emotionally harming you or your children, who is sexually harming you, I have had clients who've experienced rape from their spouses. if you are experiencing anything called abuse, and I know abuse is a hard word for many people to take in because nobody wants to say that they're experiencing abuse. Most of us really want to give our people the benefit of a doubt. Oh, if I didn't say that, then he wouldn't have hit me. But
Right.
honestly, he is a grown ass man.
Hmm.
And if your husband is doing any of those things, it is not your responsibility to fix it or alter your behavior. It is your husband's responsibility to get the help so he does not harm or hurt the people he loves. And so many times, if you are in your relationship with somebody who is abusive to you, if you feel like you are walking on eggshells, if you're
Hmm.
always worrying about what you're going to say, if you're always thinking of ways to avoid them, do you sit in your car because you do not want to be with them at night and so you wait until they go to bed to come into the house? What are some other things, Barb? If you're doing those things, this is a sign to get out.
Yeah, if you're tolerating any kind of abuse, I think it's a really clear sign. But when we talk about harmful behaviors, whether that is, abusing substances, whether that is gambling, overspending, having an affair, or whether it's enduring abuse. Um, you know, Quite often we learn these coping mechanisms at a very young age from our family of origin.
Often that's how our family of origin has coped with their own stuff, right?
Exactly, and it can be very, very difficult to break those patterns. However, there's no it's just borrowing time, basically. Any of these behaviors, you might be temporarily appeasing either yourself or somebody else um, for a short window of time to make things feel okay, but you're just borrowing time because the bad stuff is going to come back. So a
And
more permanent solution, a healthier solution, healthier adaptations, and you can work with a coach or therapist on this to identify what those coping behaviors are and whether they are healthy or not, and if they're not healthy, how to replace them with healthier strategies that will help you emerge from really bad patterns that are physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually damaging to us.
and I just want to remind those of us who are moms, oh, my children can't come from a broken home, right? All of us have heard that time and time again.
Mhm.
But if any of those things are happening in your home, I would like for you to ask yourself, what am I teaching my children?
Mhm.
We are teaching our children to stay in harmful and toxic places. And I know as a mom, I'm a mother of four, Barb's the mother of two. I would be horrified to see my child stay in a place where there is harmful and toxic behavior as an adult. So when we leave a place that is bad for us, or we say, no, I am not going to take this abuse anymore, guess what you're doing? You are teaching your children to say no and to leave harmful situations. So I'm going to say this, if you cannot do it for yourself, please do it for your children. Please.
Absolutely.
Because
Yeah.
we will only have a healthier world if we break this cycle of people staying in places that are harmful for them.
Mhm.
So think of yourself as a pioneer, think of yourself as a warrior, think of yourself as a dragon slayer. If
Mhm.
you because you are slaying the dragons of the trauma that in your family probably goes back in generations, because both Barb and I learned the behaviors to stay in places that we were in our marriages that were not great for us because that's what our parents did. And we
For
learned
sure.
to do that. We
And
learned.
with each generation of breaking the cycle, is when you are dragon slaying, just like you say, you're breaking a generational cycle of maladaptive patterns. And maybe you're not doing it until your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, but your kids will learn it earlier. And the grasp that some of these things have on family line, like generationally, things like alcoholism, for example. Uh, the once the pattern becomes diminished, and it can start with you.
Absolutely, it can.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
in regards to about being in a marriage that is unhealthy for us, a lot of times physical symptoms will show up.
Oh yeah.
Um, uh, a lot of times, like women who come out later in life, and straight women too, suffer a lot of depression and anxiety. We have had clients that have had lifelong depression, and when they have come out, that depression has lifted. I
Hmm.
have had women who have been diagnosed with MS, and once they leave their marriage or come out or both, a lot of times their symptoms of their MS disappears. I have had a client who had alopecia for where you lose your hair for
Hmm.
years, and then when she came out, all her hair grew back. So
It's wild.
it's
Wow.
just so wild, that mind body. But if you are having some intense, or you have fibromyalgia, if you're
Yep.
having some,
Migraines.
think about it. Like, think about the mind body connection. And is your staying in a marriage that is unhealthy for you, is that causing your physical symptoms?
The mind body connection is a very well documented and real thing. And we know that when people are in adverse circumstances, when they are suffering from depression or when they're sad, even they feel pain more acutely.
Mhm.
And so if you have an inkling that you shouldn't be in your marriage, and maybe you're suffering from chronic migraines, or maybe you are really struggling with insomnia. Maybe you're experiencing chronic back pain or foot pain, or here's a big one, and I've suffered this myself, gastric upset.
Mhm.
I mean, through the most stressful part of my life, when I was just coming out, I had to take a 6-month sick leave
Mhm.
because I could barely eat.
Mhm.
And if I ate, I was in pain. I would have gastric attacks, and it was stress. It was just stress because my brain was telling me something's wrong. Or you're making changes, something big's happening, alert, 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 and my body felt it.
Mhm.
So, those two things together, the physical symptom and that underlying feeling of I'm not sure that this is the right place for me anymore, I would say is a very clear indicator. Listen to your body.
Mhm. And if you look towards the future and you start thinking about your future, I'm going to say this. So many women have said to me, I used to wish that my spouse would pass away, not because I wanted them dead, it's
Hmm.
because I wanted to be free.
Wanted it out.
I just wanted out, and I didn't want to get divorced. And so I would have these feelings of, well, maybe when my husband dies, then maybe I can go live the life I want. Um, so, having those feelings, first of all, you're not a bad person, they're completely normal. But if you're having those feelings, thinking about it in the terms of, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be married before anymore. And also too, if you're the one who has a courage to say, okay, we've put in our time, and this is time for us to move our separate ways, you are also giving your husband permission to be in a life with maybe somebody else who can make him happier than you can. Or
Mhm.
maybe because he hasn't been paying attention to you for years, all of a sudden he will realize that, oh my God, I made such a mistake with my wife. I'm going to call her Mary. I made such a mistake with Mary. Maybe I should get some help. And so maybe he may end up doing some really good work on himself. He'll be a better father. He'll be a better ex husband. You just don't know what's going to happen. And also, too, I hear so many women who I would say are really codependent, are always worried their husband's going to commit suicide or that their husband is going to die without them. Unless somebody has a diagnosed mental illness where suicide is very, very prevalent, that often does not happen. A lot of
No,
times men figure out what to do.
certainly do. And oftentimes that means going and finding another woman
Yeah,
to
a lot
take
of times it
care
is
of.
finding another woman. And I'm going to
Yeah.
let you in on something. When I was coming out, I was also, and getting divorced, I was so upset like that I wasn't going to be the one to take care of my husband anymore because I had
Mhm.
done it for years. And a very wise friend to me who was like 89, we were out to lunch and she said to me, Anne-Marie, have you ever thought that you might be relieved that someone has the responsibility of taking care of your husband? And when she said that, my mindset shifted because she was
Right.
right. He started dating someone about 4 weeks after I started dating my now wife. And I was so relieved that
Hmm.
he was dating somebody. And that also was for me a really good sign that I was gay because I felt no jealousy. I wasn't
Hmm.
jealous. I was just happy he found somebody. I really was. And he's still with her and she's lovely and they have a great relationship. It seems so from the outside. But I don't have any jealousy about him finding a new partner.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the reality is that they, just like you, they will move on. Um, Oftentimes when we're facing something that's unknown, there is propensity to catastrophize,
Hmm.
especially if we are a person who was conditioned to be a caretaker and responsible for others' feelings.
Right. If you're always waiting
So,
for another shoe to drop, that might
right,
be you.
right, and so for those of us who have struggled with codependence, we sometimes you even find people who need a little caring for because they're not capable of doing it themselves, whatever it is. So the reality is, though, they are going to feel badly when you choose to leave and say, I'm done. Will they feel badly? Will they cry? Will they be upset? Will it be hard? Yes, for a period of time.
Right.
And then they will move on. They're not
Mm,
going to die.
mm-mm.
For the
And
most part, they're
no,
not going to die.
and also too, a lot of times people put off divorcing because they're afraid of the feelings because it's hard and it is hard and we will both want, Barb and I are not saying this lightly. We are saying this in the spirit of that we really want people to live their best lives because ultimately it is the best for our society if people are happier and we will be a happier society. So um, I lost my train of thought there, but Tanya, you can take that out. But we're not divorce pushers, but we are also people that believe that sometimes divorce is necessary for us to be
Mhm,
our happiest selves.
mhm, mhm. Especially if you are doing a sexuality renovation,
Yes,
right? If you
especially.
find yourself that now, oh, okay, I get that I'm not straight now,
Mhm.
and all of a sudden I am realizing I'm in a mixed orientation marriage. It really bears very serious consideration because mixed orientation marriages are challenging.
They are challenging because you both give up something. And if
Mhm,
you can't, like, if it's so hard for sometimes people in the beginning of this journey, they're okay. They're like, well, I can give up not being in a relationship with a woman for the rest of my life. but you're also denying your husband the opportunity to be with a
Mhm.
straight woman who wants to have sex with him, who may find him delightful, because just like sexual, like just like being lgbtq is an orientation, being straight is an orientation. So there are straight women that get very excited by men and want to be with them and want to have sex with them, and think their body is beautiful and stuff like that. So if you're,
I'm not that. I'm not that.
I know, but if you are in a mixed orientation marriage, you're like, well, we'll just stay together. Your husband is actually missing out on something that could be equally as wonderful for him.
Well, and I think this sort of parlays nicely into the next point, which is if your future seems unfulfilling or bleak, it may also feel that way for him if you don't really want to be with him in that way.
Hmm. Hmm.
So try and visualize like what if you did made no changes whatsoever to your marital status and you decided, no, I'm sticking with this marriage because that's what I was taught to do and reasons X, Y, Z. Try and cast your mind into the future. What is, how are you going to feel and what is this going to be like for you and for him in 15 years, in 20 years, in 30 years? Um, is that the kind of future that you want?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
We get one crazy, beautiful life that's like this long.
Yeah, it is really this long. It's very, very short. And so if you have spent your life not being happy or doing what you're supposed to do and not finding thinking that something is missing, then maybe it is time for you to think about divorce. And
Hmm.
if you're staying because you've been conditioned that preserving the marriage is the right thing to do, it's time to maybe rethink that as well. That often comes from people who are in deeply religious places or in deeply heteronormative places. And what do we mean by that? Heteronormativity means that everybody's assumed straight unless proven otherwise. So, if you're a straight woman, this can be really, really hard for you too, because you may not want to be, you're in a place where everybody's married, everybody has 2.5 children, everybody does this, everybody does that. There's middle class communities like that, there's lower class communities like that, there's high end communities like that. And, you just stay married no matter what,
Hmm.
and you've been conditioned to do this, meaning maybe this isn't your natural state, maybe your more authentic state of who you're supposed to be as a person is not being married to your now husband. It may be a woman in the future, it may be a man in the future, but if you're staying just because that was what you're told to do and you are not happy, guess what? Lots of people get divorced. You may not be in a community where you see that, but loads and loads of people get divorced. And a lot of times they have much happier lives after they leave their marriage.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you do decide to leave, you'll be in great company because there's so many of us
Right.
who make that choice. I mean, like you said at the beginning of this episode, 80% of women decide to precipitate divorce, and 90% if they're educated. Um, and you will find them. You won't be alone, and you're not the only woman in the world who is experiencing this.
Mhm.
Uh, I remember when I first came out, and was sort of awakened to my authentic sexuality. I mean, I was so shocked you could have blown me over with just a little poof. You blew me over like a feather. And I thought I was the only one.
Mhm.
I thought I was the only one back in 2017. Flash forward now, today is 2024, and I'm actually working with you in these communities, with this community of women who are all having parallel experiences. And there are, I don't know, thousands of us. I mean, how many people contact us every year?
there's millions of later in life people, and coming out later in life people. I mean, we only see the people that seek support, but there's lots of people who got toughing it by themselves and who
100%.
refuse because that's their trauma response is not to seek support. But
Yeah.
I mean, there's groups all over the place that of later in life folks, and so I would say there's millions of us, probably hundreds of thousands of people come out a year, and that's
Oh,
what I after marriage and children.
for sure, for
They're
sure.
never gonna count us because we're gay. They're never gonna figure this out unless somebody does a longitudinal study. But that's just from anecdotal experience that both Barb and I have seen. And also, too, I want to mention so a lot of times people do polyamory, open marriages, all those things like this, mixed orientation, because you're keeping it together for the kids. You're going to stay together no matter what, because the kids need a two-parent family. I got news for everybody. The number one factor of a child's happiness as they grow up is their mother's happiness. There has been
Mhm,
studies done, and if the mom is happy, the children are happy. But if the
mhm,
mom is unhappy, the children often are very aware of it. And don't think your kids are not aware of the strife between your husband and you, because they are. Kids are little knowledge seekers, they're little spies. They know exactly what's going on and they can sense the tension in the house a lot of times. And
mhm.
if you've opened your marriage and have a new girlfriend, even if you haven't told your children,
They'll
um,
figure it out.
they know. They'll figure it
Mhm.
out one
They
way
can
or
smell bullshit a mile away.
yeah.
Like, I had a grade 6 teacher tell me that once, actually, kids can smell bullshit a mile away, and it's interesting to me that correct me if I'm wrong here, because I haven't been doing this as long as you have, but it really seems to me like it's the folks who come out and leave their marriages early when their kids are younger, so when they do it earlier, have an easier time
Yes.
versus folks who wait until their children are adults.
Absolutely, because well, first, so I always say that absolutely. So if your kids are younger than 9, um, I'm going to say that it will quickly become their normal if you and your spouse get their divorce. There'll be mom's house, there'll be dad's house. Um, if you're saying to yourself, oh my God, I can't imagine not being with my child every day, one of the benefits of divorce for women is oftentimes they get time to themselves. And
Mhm,
so, if that sounds even slightly attractive to you, yes, you will miss your child, but also time you will have, if you're in a healthy divorce situation,
mhm,
you will have more time for yourself and be able to do and pursue things that make your heart sing. Because most of us, um, we are moms, but we're also so much more than that. So
mhm.
if you are staying together just for the kids, if that's the only reason why you're staying with your husband, oof, really?
Yeah,
What are we
no,
teaching our children? What are
no, not good. And I'll tell you from personal experience, because that was the hardest piece for me, is not was not living with my children full time. And what I came to discover was that uh like you said, my time to myself really helped me to replenish and grow as a person and to do the work. And then the time that I had with my kids was so precious. I was much more present with them
Mhm,
and focused on them during our time together, which really only served to strengthen the bond between us. You
mhm,
know, it really improved my relationship with my children. Not that we had a terrible relationship before, but they valued that concentrated focus time. Uh, where mom was really focused on them. They loved
well,
it.
and also too, I moved away. My son did not want to move with me, and I moved to Nashville when he was a junior in high school. He was my youngest child. My other three, my kids had a hard time. And what I find really, really interesting is that my youngest son adjusted so well to this and it became his normal.
Mhm,
So I'll share a little thing right now. Is he's going away to college? He's going back to college. He took a year off, and I said, "Hey, I haven't heard from you a lot lately." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I'm trying to like not call you and Dad a lot because I know I need to adjust living in this new place, and I don't want to depend on you and Dad all the time." And that really like touched my heart because I moved and I didn't live with him all the time. He did come and see me. I went up to Connecticut about once a month while he was in high school. I spend a week there every month. And but he doesn't think of me any differently than if his dad and I were living together. He's like, I need to like grow up a little bit from my parents. And I feel like it's hard for me, but I'm also really proud of him for doing that because he needs to know what he knows what he needs to do. He has a lot of anxiety around being in new places, but he's also owning it. He's 21 years old and he's owning it. And I'm like, okay, well, when we're done with this phase, I just want to talk to you again all the time. But I respect his boundaries and I want him to go and live his life and I want him to be happy. And so for a couple of months, if I don't talk to him every day, I'll be okay.
Well,
I
and
will.
he's doing what he's supposed to do, which
He
is
is
great,
doing what his best to. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
And so
it's awesome.
one of the last things we want to talk about, and I think we need to really define this here, is if you're giving up your power in your marriage.
Mm.
Okay, Barb, explain what that means.
Giving up your power means deferring constantly to what your husband wants. Um,
It's want.
maybe, maybe it's his wants, needs, and desires come first. Maybe that could look like not having full access to uh, your financial stuff within your marriage. Maybe it could be something as simple as like, you know, he always picks the place to go out to dinner. Or
Well,
it
go ahead. I think about my own story. Like, so one of the reasons I went into chaplaincy as a minister is I knew my husband would never come with me to a call, even though
Mhm,
he owned his own business and could work remotely from anywhere. He would never have come with me to, like, if I had gotten called to a church as a pastor. And
mhm,
so I deliberately went into chaplaincy, and also because I didn't want to be a pastor. But, there was a bunch of reasons why I chose chaplaincy because I knew he would never, ever go anywhere.
mhm,
Also, too, like, I'll never forget it. Like, so I always wanted to travel when I got older. And so this was when I was deciding to leave my marriage. And this was like one of the, like, I don't want to say nail on the coffin, but like one of the like I'll never forget it. So we were traveling. We went away to a foreign country together. We had a long day of traveling. And I was like, I had always envisioned this future of us traveling when the kids, grew up and stuff like that, because that's what I wanted to do. And he said to me, "I don't think I'm going to travel when I'm older." He goes, "I don't really like this, and I think I'm just going to stay home." And I remember thinking to myself, first of all, I was shocked.
yeah,
Yeah. And then I was like, as I was making the decision to leave, I was like, I want to travel. I want to do things. I'm not going to give up my power, the things and desires that I want. Another thing I wanted to do was always live in another place because I always lived in Connecticut. He was not going to leave our little town if like
right,
dynamite was under his butt. And
right,
all of his things are valid. He is perfectly in his right to want all of those things. But I wanted something different. And
mhm,
my feelings, my power is valid too. And we were not meeting in the center. And so
right,
it was really important for me to do the things I wanted to do. And
mhm.
so when I came out later in life, when I got divorced, I took back my power.
For sure, your life becomes centered on yourself.
Mhm, mhm.
Um,
And that's almost, oh my gosh, Barb, that's almost like heresy, right? For a woman?
well, we are. we are conditioned to not center ourselves in our own lives, that we are there to serve other people, particularly our parents, our husbands, and our children. And it's such a world of difference. I speaking from personal experience where, going from a life where your husband has the deciding factor on, is the decider on everything, what car you drive, where you live, what kind of house you live in, whether you have access to financial stuff, where you go on vacation, how you spend your Saturday night, where you go out to eat, like all of those things. And if you never get to, uh, you know, be heard in any of that, it's it feels really incredible to step away from that situation. And then the next thing you know, it's like, hey, I can have popcorn for dinner if I want, or I can paint the walls pink and not ask anyone's permission, or you know what, I can put this money away, or I can spend it on this, or if I want to go on vacation and I've always hated going to the beach and I want to go hiking, guess what? I get to go hiking. It's incredibly fulfilling to be able to just go and claim what it is that you want without reference to anyone else.
So, if you are in the process of what we call the messy middle in the later in life community, and you want to be in conversation with us and other women about these very important topics that we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, Barb and I are holding a workshop July 8th through the 10th, which is Monday through Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central Time on Zoom, where we're going to talk about navigating the messy middle and finding support and talking about why this is so hard, talking about divorce, talking about divorce and children, and most of all, talking about how to find community. And we would love for you to join us. You have to sign up though. It is at comingoutssupport.net, and we would love to see you. We will help you navigate the messy middle. That is what we do. That is our strength, and that is our power. So we would love for you to join us on July 8th, and we hope we see you there. It is at comingoutssupport.net. And Barb, any last words of wisdom before we leave today?
I will say that if any of this resonated with you, um, you have some thinking to do, and don't do it alone. Don't go through this alone.
Mhm.
I know that is our often a maladaptive coping strategy, um, that many of us have, to isolate when we're making a difficult decision. And this is exactly the point. If you are reconsidering your sexuality, if you are considering leaving your heteronormative marriage, this is the time to lean in, not to pull away.
Mhm.
So come to this workshop. It cost you your time, and we're going to help you with just gain a little new bit of a new perspective and give you a little bit of education. So join
Absolutely.
us.
I'm going to let Barb's word be the last word today. Thank you so much, Barb, for joining me. As always, a great conversation.
Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Coming Out and Beyond, LGBTQIA+ stories with Anne-Marie Zanzal. New episodes of the Coming Out and Beyond podcast drop every other Friday. You can tune in at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and at annemariezanzal.com. Be sure to hit subscribe when tuning in so you never miss an episode. And for more resources, articles, videos, and a free downloadable guide for coming out later in life, visit annemariezanzal.com.